This sales table in Excel has many rows, repeated products, different sales people, different customer names, and some orders have more than just one item. So how can we quickly answer questions like which items are unique, which items repeat the most, which orders have only one item, and which orders have multiple items? The first thing I want to do here is I want to know what are the unique items. But why only look for the items? Because we only have in this case one single criterion, only that one column, column C, the items. So let's say pen, this is my first item, the first row. Is pen a item that is unique, or it's going to appear again in a row, in the rows below? I don't know. So how can I answer this question? And on top of that, what are the items that are being repeated the most? We can easily do a formula in Excel to help us with this, or we can go with the pivot tables. So let's say we can go with pivot tables first. What I want to do here, I want to, instead of use a regular range in Excel, as I have here, I want to format as a table because a table has many benefits. And one important benefit is today I have 1081 rows. But if my data set updates and then I got more new rows, the range is going to be automatically updated. So my summary within the pivot tables are also going to include this new range. But anyway, let me click, hold, and drag to select everything I have. And then I can go to Insert Table and make sure within this dialog box, Create Table, you mark the checkbox, My Table Has Headers, and then click OK. Now Excel is going to transform your pivot table into a table itself, and it's, as I said, way better to work with. Now we can go here to Insert and then go for Pivot Table. Excel is going to open up a new dialog box, and we can go straight for OK, because Excel is going to create a new sheet for us. And here on the left, we can see our pivot table. And here on the right, the informations we can use to summarize, to set up our analysis, let's say. Basically, those informations we have right here are the columns of our table. And we need to click, hold, and drag within any of those options and drop into those fields, those areas. Filters, rows, columns, and also values. So let's say I want to count the items first. Let me only look for the items, just one single criterion. Click on the items, click, hold, and drag and drop within rows. But why rows and not filters, columns, or values? Because when I use rows in the pivot table option, the pivot table is going to list all the items that I have within my table. And the pivot table is very intelligent, and it's not going to show me values more than once. What I mean by that is, let's say, even though we have binder appearing more than once within our range, let's say, the pivot table is going only to summarize those values in such a fashion to only show unique values here. However, if the pivot table is only showing me here the unique items without the repetitions, how can I possibly know how many binders I have, how many bottles, and etc.? We can go again to the fields, take the items, click, hold, and drag now, and drop within values. But why is that? Because when we drop some names, texts, items within values, the pivot table cannot adapt those values, cannot make a sum, a addition, because it makes no sense. How you are going to adapt names? So what the pivot table does here, it's going to count the items, count 1, 2, 3, 4, and etc. And using this method, we know for sure how many appearances we have for each item. As we saw before, binder is our first item because the pivot table usually organizes the data in alphabetical order. So from A to Z, binder is the first. and it appears 3 times within our dataset. However, there's certain items such as calendar that only appear once, so it's a unique item. However, how can I separate the unique items to the others that appear more than once? We can duplicate this pivot table and apply some filters in order to always show only the unique values in one side, and to the right, for example, only repeated values. So let me go here to column A and B, click, hold, and drag to select, and then you can Ctrl+C to copy and Ctrl+V to paste. Ctrl+C, skip one column, and then another one, Ctrl+V to paste it. However, I cannot display the entire set of items. I only want to show the unique in the left and the repeated in the right. So let me go here to the first pivot table, the one in the left, click on the filter icon to open up here the options to filter. However, the standard options or the traditional one are not going to help us in this case. We need to add a value filters. I want to filter everything that is equals 1. That's it. Because now if we hit OK, the pivot table is going to only show us the unique values where the count is equal to 1. And on the other hand, in the next pivot table, we can do the opposite. Instead of use equals, because it's going to be very difficult to list all the possibilities. Imagine if I want to filter equals to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and etc. Instead of doing that, we can use greater than, and then we can specify everything that is greater than 1, and then click OK. Very simple. And on top of that, we can also organize this pivot table, let's say from the largest to the smallest one. So click again on the filter, and then go to more sort options, and then I want to use descending count of item. Okay, it's going to organize from the largest one to the smallest one. Now we have 2 separate lists. Now I know the unique values and the repetition, right? However, this is very simple. We are only using one single criteria, only the items, one single column. However, and what if we have a more specific problem, multiple criteria? Let's say I want to count how many orders I have. And in this case, it's quite simple because the order ID is already answering me this question. As we guys can see here, the first 3 rows, the first, the second, and the third, have the same order ID number, 64. So I know I have 3 repetitions for this order ID. So it's basically the same as we did for the items. We can count the order ID. So we know the single orders or the orders that has multiple items, for example, because here is this, we have the same salesperson, the same customer, however, with different items. So it means that the same customer bought different items for its same order ID, right? So it's totally fine. However, let me make this quite more interesting. Let me remove the column A. So click on the column A, right click, and then delete. Now, how can we solve this problem? We can go for the date, because if we have the same salesperson, the same customer in the same date, okay, we might have the same order. However, because we have multiple rows, it indicates that the same customer in the same day bought different items. How can we do that? How can we solve this problem? We can create here an extra column, a helper column. In this case, I want to combine the informations that tell me when a product or when a order is being repeated. And in this case, if we have the same date, the same salesperson, the same customer name, it's because it's the same order. So what I can do here is I can couple the date with the customer with the sales person, for example. Hit enter. I just made a typo here. Sale. Oh no, I think it's right. Sales. Okay, I miss a S. Salesperson. That's it. Let me increase the width of this column. And basically, guys, we can combine those informations. And the order doesn't actually matter, right? Because I can first select the salesperson and then the date and then the customer. It doesn't matter. What matters is the final result. I'm going to show you equals, and then select one of those criteria, let's say date, and then I can append the date using the ampersand with the second criteria. Salesperson, append to the customer name. Hit enter. What Excel is going to do is, it's going to combine all those cells together, and if we have now a repetition between those values, let's say, we have here the same number, the same customer, the same salesperson and the same customer, it's because we have the same order. Very simple. So we basically create a custom code that is going to tell us whether or not we have repeated orders. And you guys might notice here, a date is not properly formatted, but it doesn't matter, right? And why it does happen? Because when we have a date in Excel, we see in this very nice organized way, months, days, and years. However, within in the background, the date I store as a serial number. So basically, January 1st of 2027 is this number right here, 46,380. Okay, so this is the number behind the date. But anyway, now we can use this column to check whether or not we have repeated orders. We can do the same process. We can insert a pivot table. I want to create a new worksheet, click OK. In this case, I want to go here all the way to the right. We don't have yet the new column that I added, but why is that? Because a pivot table is not going to update automatically for you. Whenever you add new rows or new columns, new information, you need to manually update the pivot table. However, the good news is you only need to do it once for all pivot tables you have, because the whole workbook, the whole Excel file is going to be updated. So date, refresh all, refresh all. Okay, that's it. If we go again here to the right, we can see our custom column. I think we can take this custom column, click, hold, and drag, and within rows and drop within rows. As we guys can see now, we have this value appearing here within the pivot table. However, it's not very descriptive, right? What are the items of this first order? We actually don't know. So I'm going to give you a more interesting idea of layout. Go back to the fields and we can take, let's say, the items. Click, hold, and drag and drop within rows. Now we have the custom column. It's like we have a hierarchy. And then the custom column is on the top, and indented we have other items, folder, paper, and pen. Of course, they are being repeated. But let's say I want to sort only the repeated orders and the unique orders. I want to separate. What we can do, we can go again using the same technique. I would take the date, customer, salesperson, click, hold, and drag within values, because the pivot table is going to count how many times this certain criteria appears. And in this case, we can filter again only the number 1 or the numbers that are greater than 1, 2, 3, 4, and etc. Let me select both of those columns, copy and paste here to the side. And again, we can apply some filters as we did before. Everything that equals to 1, okay. Yeah, it's already working. Now I can see the unique orders. On top of that, I can go here to the right, click on the filter, value filters, greater than 1, okay. And on top of that, is there a order that has, let's say, more than 3 items? I don't know. So let's go again to the filters, more sort options, and descending, I want to use the count of the date plus customer plus salesperson, okay? And that's it. Okay, we basically had the same result as before. 3 is the maximum number. However, maybe we have some orders with different repetitions. Okay, no, yeah, just 3. So, however, that's it. We learned how to count unique values, how to only look for unique values, repeated values, using only one single criteria, or in this case, only one single column, or using multiple columns as a criteria. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you have any questions or any suggestions, comment down below, and I see you in the next one.